Hello, hello. Happy November. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to Komen's virtual Metastatic Breast Cancer Impact Series. My name is Casey Volpe, and I am the manager of MBC Initiatives here for Komen. The programming for this series is envisioned as a year-long conversation with attendees where we take new information and present new speakers every month. So today our topic is communicating with your family about metastatic breast cancer, and we have two fabulous speakers for you. Dr. Eliza Parks, a psychotherapist, and Sarah Axner Gilmore, a social worker. We also have a fabulous moderator, Amanda Celeste, who is an MBC advocate and here to share some of her lived experience with us. Before we begin, Komen would like to thank our sponsors for supporting the 2025 MBC Impact Series. So thank you to AstraZeneca, Gilead, and Merck as our premier sponsors, and thank you to Daiichi Sankyo and Novartis as our signature sponsors. Say that 10 times fast. The series is made possible because of all their generosity, and that is why we're able to bring all of this valuable information directly to you every month. One more quick housekeeping note. While our speakers are talking, please post your questions in the Q&A feature in Zoom. We will get to as many as we can at the end of the presentations. But please remember, speakers are not able to provide any individual medical advice or mental health advice. So keep questions as general as possible. Towards the end of our program, we're going to drop a link in the chat because we want your feedback, and this helps craft the topics and the direction of the future events that we put on for MBC Impact Series. So now we are all excited that you're joining us today. And to start, I would like to introduce you to our moderator, Amanda Celeste. In December 2014, Amanda was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. Then in 2018, she experienced a recurrence, finding that the cancer had returned and metastasized to her bones. Since her diagnosis of stage 4, Amanda has made it her mission to educate others and advocate for people impacted by this disease. She's a former LBC Young Advocate. She is featured in LBC's Can and Did podcast series and serves as a patient and parent collaborator with Gilead Science's book, The Adventure Jar. Apologies, guys. I am battling a sinus infection. So she is also the former parent coordinator for Project Life and the CEO and founder of another tongue twister. Metastic. I'm going to have Amanda help me with this one because I'm messing it up and I feel terrible. Amanda has shared her voice as both a panelist and a moderator with the MBC community on multiple projects. And I'll be dropping the link to the Adventure Jar in the chat and sending it out after the event as well. Amanda, come on screen, help correct my tongue ties here, and let's get this show on the road.
Thank you so much, Casey, and you are doing fantastic. It's metastatic. I know it's a very long term. It's a nonprofit that we have that my husband and I created. But yes, so as Casey pointed out, I am an individual that is living with metastatic breast cancer. I'm also a parent of three not so little kids anymore, but at one time when I was diagnosed, they were. So this topic hits very near and dear to me, and it's such a topic that it has a lot of inquiries with it. So I'm very excited for everyone present to get to meet Dr. Park and Sarah Gilmore. Dr. Park is a psychiatrist and an expert of the intersection of mental health and cancer. See, there I go right there, Casey. Following her clinical training at Harvard and Women's Health, she held a faculty position at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She also specializes in care and treatment of individuals with cancer. In 2023, she launched Park Psychiatry, PLLC, and it's a private psychiatry and psychotherapy practice in North Carolina. She also serves as a medical advisory board member of Living Beyond Breast Cancer. So excited to get to hear your presentation today, Dr. Park. We also have Sarah Axner Gilmore, and Sarah has over 15 years of professional experience in the fields of mental health, medical, social work, hospice, and oncology. She also has her Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology from Cleveland State and also association and administration as well. Social work from a lot of different places as well, too, Western Reserve University. Sarah also has extensive experience providing both individual and group counseling, and she integrates different creative arts into her practices. She also helps to develop and implement cancer support programs and facilitates support groups. Another wonderful advocate that we have in you, Sarah. I'm extremely excited to hear about the topics moving forward.
Right. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And it is such a pleasure for me to be here with you all today. Thank you for the invitation. And I am focusing my time of this talk on a few different topics. We'll be able to move on to the first slide, please. A quick overview. So we will be discussing how to keep up the conversation about metastatic breast cancer and your journey and how to maintain your support networks. We will explore how to manage when plans change, and we will also understand ways to maintain and evolve identity beyond diagnosis. My hope is really that the ideas discussed today might feel relevant to both survivors and supporters. And these topics are so incredibly important and very often discussed in the support groups that I'm involved with here at the Gathering Place. Next slide, please. So we know, we'll go back one. Sorry about that. Communication. There we are. Communication matters. Talking openly can really help reduce fear, anxiety. It can strengthen bonds. It can make the journey feel perhaps a little bit less lonely. And metastatic breast cancer is an evolving journey, and what you need today may look very different than what you might need next month or next year. So we find that having ongoing dialogue is incredibly important. It can help in your decision making. Conversations can help clarify your values, your goals, and really help you guide decisions. Next slide. So, of course, communication is a process, not just a one-time thing. And this here is not an exhaustive list, but some of the common challenges that we find is that support networks sometimes change. Sometimes loved ones show up in very powerful and steady ways. Other times people may fade away, or sometimes due to discomfort or uncertainty. We also are familiar with navigating all sorts of different family patterns, different dynamics, and sometimes cancer has a way of amplifying these. Survivors may hesitate to share updates out of a desire to protect their loved ones or to avoid judgment or pity or changes in their relationships and roles. And these conversations are emotionally draining. They are full of unknowns. There's unpredictability. It can be so hard to keep up the emotional stamina to process the diagnosis, manage treatments, and maintain relationships. You may also feel a loss of privacy by having to navigate conversations involving your health. And you may feel a pressure to stay positive and strong, even during the times that you're not feeling that way. Next slide. You and your loved ones may not always be in the same emotional place all the time. We're processing things differently. And these differences don't necessarily mean a disconnection, but rather that we're human. And having open and caring dialogue can really help you and your loved ones feel supported and connected, even when you might disagree. Next slide, please. So setting boundaries and sort of setting the tone can be a great thing to get a hold of. I've included some ideas here of scripts even that you might use to help create boundaries by expressing your needs. So letting your loved ones know what you need and how they can help. Also expressing how and when you want to talk about your cancer, and also expressing when you need space or when you need a break. Next slide. You can also create regular check-ins, perhaps weekly or monthly, so that you can control the timing of your updates. These boundaries can be so helpful to conserve your emotional energy while also allowing others to feel included and informed. You can also allow yourself to express your truth with gentleness by saying, I don't have the answers right now, but I appreciate your care and your inquiries. Or, this scan brought some mixed news. I'm still taking it in. I'm still processing it. And using communication tools such as group texts or group emails or platforms like Caring Bridge can also help reduce some of the repetition and burden of providing ongoing updates. And finally, establishing a designated communicator to provide updates on your behalf can be helpful as well. Next slide. So not everyone needs to know all of the details about your health in the same way. So sharing information based on your relationships or your closeness can help create boundaries while conserving your energy. So you might share detailed or real-time updates and emotions with your inner circle people. So you might share, I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed, I need help, I need rest, I need space. Those are the more intimate things that you might share with your inner circle supporters. And then you might share more general updates with your middle circle supporters. So people like close friends or supportive siblings or involved coworkers, things like my scan results showed progression, but treatment remains the same. And then finally, you might share brief messages with your outer circle supporters. So maybe a neighbor or school parents or general coworkers where you might share, I'm in treatment for metastatic breast cancer. And having these types of boundaries can help communication feel a little more streamlined and manageable. Next slide, please. The task of answering constant questions like, how are you feeling, can be draining, even when they're asked with the most loving intent. And doing little things to care for yourself might help you engage in more effective communication. It is not selfish to protect your emotional energy by saying, I'm not up for talking about health right now. What else can we talk about? Or also practicing self-soothing after hard conversations, maybe doing some guided meditation or journaling, creative arts outlets, spending time in nature, just having quiet time, really anything that you might find peace or comfort in. Next slide. Sometimes we see that over time, some people may pull closer and others may fade. Sometimes people pull away when they feel uncertainty or fear or emotional fatigue. And depending on the situation, and of course, every situation is very unique and nuanced, but sometimes naming the change and communicating about it can help to ease the tension. So you might say, I know it's tough to talk about this. It's very tough for me too, but I don't want us to stop talking altogether. Also, focusing your energy on surrounding yourself with the people that make you feel more safe and seen can be prioritized. Next slide, please. Now, trying new shared activities that fit your current energy level, like low stress hangouts, can help nurture your relationships. And sometimes when conversations can center mostly on health updates, both sides sometimes might feel limited or strained. So you might balance your updates by expressing some curiosity about your loved one. You can help to make the relationship feel more reciprocal or balanced or connected. You might say, it helps me so much to still share in your life. What is something you're working on, or what are you excited about? Next slide. You can decide on a communication cadence or routine that feels manageable to you. You might choose brief windows in your day or your week to provide updates so that you can conserve your energy and honor your emotional health, and also set expectations. I was recently working with a participant who expressed having a ton of anxiety every morning, and it turned out it was right at the same time she would receive texts and phone calls from her very loving supporters in her life. But what we had to do was kind of think closely about how to manage those texts and phone calls and sort of make those boundaries. Next slide, please. So sometimes it might be hard to find the words to connect outside of health updates. So I've included a few Kickstarters here. Next slide. So seeking opportunities to create new connections can add to your support networks and can bring comfort, reduce isolation. Online peer groups or online networks can be helpful to develop and sustain new friendships when mobility or energy might be more difficult. And connecting with others living with metastatic breast cancer through mentoring programs or buddy programs can also be both grounding and meaningful. Next slide. So we'll move into our topic of how to manage when plans change. Changes to family plans can result in a variety of emotions: grief, anger, guilt, frustration, worry about disappointing others, or a lost sense of normalcy. Next slide. Sometimes we see in our support groups that naming and discussing your grief or losses can help to sort of lessen their power. And also avoiding self-blame can be so important. So really calling out that the changes to plans reflect the disease's unpredictability and not a personal failure. Next slide. So involving your loved ones in brainstorming alternative plans can help them feel included and also may reduce your emotional load, creating a plan A, plan B together. Next slide, please. And reimagining what's possible can, in a way, allow you to reclaim some control by focusing on preserving connection in new ways. So if travel isn't possible, you might bring the event to you through small home gatherings or virtual celebrations. Or in the place of a big trip, you might find virtual or local experiences or staycations. Or you might create mini traditions like movie nights or making shared playlists together. Next slide. It's really focusing on the values behind the plan might help you more easily embrace the need to modify plans and create new opportunities of connection. And honoring the present moment, maybe with a ritual or symbol, lighting a candle or writing a special note or taking a special family photo can be helpful. Next slide. Support groups, we find, can really help to normalize the grief and loss involved with altered plans. And it can be also a wealth of information and ideas as far as creative coping ideas. And plans may shift, but your supporters can help adapt and flex plans. And again, caring for your own emotional well-being, recognizing that anger, frustration, sadness, loss are normal when illness changes plans. Next slide. So a diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer is shocking and life-altering, and it is natural to feel a loss of identity. It can be a disruption to how you've defined yourself in the past, who you predicted and expected to be in the present and future. Identity shifts are natural, and maintaining and rediscovering parts of yourself can bring hope and resilience and a perspective that cancer is a part of your story, but not the whole story. And dual awareness is the idea of holding both the reality of the illness and the fullness of life together at the same time. As an example, I can be scared and still find meaning, and I can hold grief and still find love. Next slide. The words we use can shape how we see ourselves, like describing yourself as a cancer patient versus a person living with metastatic breast cancer. And using person-first language can subtly but powerfully remind yourself and your supporters that your identity is much bigger than an illness. And the messaging being that You're not denying the reality of the reality of the illness, but that you're widening the lens so that cancer becomes part of your story, not the whole story. Next slide. When a diagnosis takes center stage, other parts of yourself might feel muted or forgotten, and doing the things that make you feel most like yourself, even in small or modified ways, can be grounding. Next slide. So what helps? We've listed quite a few different coping strategies and also ways that you might reconnect to yourself here. Next slide. Being a whole person includes feelings of vulnerability, anger, humor, exhaustion, and hope, and so many other complex things. And self-compassion involves honoring your complex emotions and doing the things that you love, and choosing comforting practices like wrapping yourself in a warm blanket and resting on the couch that day, or doing gentle movement exercises and stretching, or practicing mindful breathing, listening to calming music, resting without apologizing, and connecting back to you. And finally, resisting the shoulds. I should be handling this better, or I should have more energy, is an important thing to consider as well. Next slide. So being a person first doesn't mean pretending the diagnosis isn't part of your life. It means you are integrating it into your larger identity. You're taking time, you might take time to recognize what cancer has not changed, like your love for your family, your humor, your creativity, your stubbornness, your kindness, your essence, and also have space for who you are becoming, new priorities, new boundaries, new values, new ways of seeing life. Next slide. So who you are is always evolving, and even during uncertainty, there can be opportunities to find a renewed sense of self and purpose. So thank you all for your time.
All right. I will go next. Thank you, Sarah. It's hard to follow up from there. And thank you for the introduction, Amanda. My name's Eliza Park. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I am going to be a little less structured, so you guys will have to bear with me in that respect. But what I'm kind of hoping we can have some time for is some, you know, conversations and or questions about kind of what are some of the trickier ways to talk about some deeply complicated and sometimes nuanced topics. And I would say that this is a great place to think about current dilemmas or down the road, if that would be helpful for you or for a friend or for other people in your life. But what I kind of first want to say is that, no matter, and I'll be primarily talking about from respect for families where they're still kind of dependent kids. I don't think that parents suddenly stop worrying about their kids the day they turn 18, but just for a framework. And many of this will also apply to older kind of young adults or other older children. I find that it does not matter whether we are 20, 50, or 80, we still seem to worry about our children. And so if those come up as well, I think it's also really helpful. But what I first want to say is I do believe that no matter what approach a parent takes, or ultimately what they ultimately decide to say or not say about their illness, I appreciate that anyone who is listening here today, who is taking time to think about this, is truly trying to help their family under some of the toughest of circumstances. It's hard to talk about cancer in general, and I find it can be It's even harder when it doesn't include the words like cure or remission. And parents have valid concerns about how information about their prognosis or their illness could impact their loved ones. And I think that most people come in with the intentions of wanting to be honest and truthful, and at the same time also safeguard both themselves and their family when the topic is really difficult. And I want to acknowledge that the truth is that balance is hard, and it is not a one size fits all. And so some of the things I might discuss may or may not directly apply for your family. But I think regardless, there's no pain that a parent would not walk through for their child if they could. And it's not so much I find that someone does not have the words or know what to say. It's rather that it can feel like it's such a burden on those that they love that there is something that we may not have as much control as we want. If anything, I would say it often creates many unwanted changes. And at the same time, it can be heartbreaking to witness how that impacts our families. And at the same time, I do believe that one area that we can always have control is how we want to support those that we love, and how we help them feel safe, how we help them feel loved, as we go through this process. Because I do think at its core, when kids or as families can recognize that even though all this is happening, we have the capacity to cope with these changes together. In the long run, this is what really helps protect kids. And what I always like to remind my patients is that even under the hardest of circumstances, kids are incredibly resilient, and usually far more resilient than us as adults. And in that setting, I think knowing that if this is even a priority or something that they're thinking about, that more often than not, their kids are going to be okay. So as a guide here, what parents know their children the best. And I would be remiss if I were to tell someone how they should handle a situation for their child. As a parent who's got more than one kid, I am impressed by just how astronomically different they are. And I know they came from the same place, but oh my goodness, you would not have thought that they look alike, and that's where it stops. And with that being said, how one might approach one kid versus another might look really different beyond just the general frameworks of age, or whether or not they're living in the home or not. And if there's time, and if people want to talk more about, how one might adjust how we approach things for, a kid who's got a lot of anxiety, who tends to need a lot of reassurance. And that's going to look really different than how we might approach conversations with the, semi-surly adolescent who likes to talk in grunts. So they both need to have a connection, and there's important information to convey, and it's going to look super different, even if they're quote unquote the same age. And with that being said, parents often worry or feel like they need to pick the optimal time or want to do it just right. But this is not a one and done conversation. And so there are going to be lots of opportunities, and I think it's hard to kind of screw it up. But even if you felt like you did, there'll be other opportunities. And that to say, one does not have to do this perfectly. So when I think about conversations with families, to the extent possible, I encourage parents to first get clarity for themselves. And there is so much to that. And I think that starts with your oncology team being upfront with you. And it also takes the parent being receptive or open to hearing about it. And sometimes we are more open to that than others, and sometimes teams are less open to that than others as well. But that's kind of the baseline, because it's really hard to have a conversation about this when we don't have a good sense of where we are in this whole process. So I would say that's number one. And then after that, then the parent has to be okay with talking about it. And that might take a little bit of time. It's, I think, perfectly okay to get teary. I can cry at the drop of a hat. My kids know this. And at the same time, we don't want to be so overwhelmed with emotion that um, we're not available to our kids when we're having conversations. So that might not mean that every conversation has to happen the day that there's big news. It might take a little bit. So we may often have to take all the effort to kind of be in a good place and be ready to talk about it. And your kid also has to be in a good place to hear it. So just because you feel like you're ready, well, that might not align with your kid's readiness for that day. And so I think for parents, the tough part is often that when your kid signals that they're ready or want to talk, the parents are often the ones that we ask to kind of be ready to switch gears and be responsive to that need. And so when I think about this as a process of talking, I like to ask people to think about kind of where do you think you are on this chain? Do you feel like do you have a good sense of what's happening with your illness, of what is down the pike in terms of treatment options or what that might look like? Do you feel ready to talk about it, not in terms of feeling comfortable, but that you can have a conversation and not be overwhelmed with emotion? And then finally, the last part is actually whether or not your kid is ready to hear it. So there's a lot of work that can happen just internally before we even get to that place. And I say that because, as I mentioned earlier about how there is no pain that a parent would not go through for their child, it is so tough when your kid is showing you painful emotions, when they're scared, when they're sad, when they're disappointed, because plans had to change, like Sarah described. And, for example, it is so tempting to say, don't worry. And it's coming from a place of genuine love and our desire for our child to not worry. And, at the same time, for anyone who is a worrier, I might ask them to say, when have those words actually been helpful? And the answer is usually not. It just makes us frustrated. So being able to be attuned enough to be able to tolerate if our kids are having a tough time requires us being regulated enough that we can sustain that. So one of the things that Komen had asked us to maybe talk about a bit was when specifically talking about MBC, it can feel like we're walking this balance beam of wanting to sustain hope and also acknowledge the reality of disease. And there is no one perfect way, but in general, one of the approaches that I think it can apply across any relationship, that's where and for ourselves as well, is to share the possibility of what can occur along with not only one's commitment to living, but what we're doing. And I find that even when you feel uncertain about how treatment will go or how the next step is going to be, you can still describe your situation truthfully under these circumstances without overwhelming them. Because helping your child understand the range of possibilities does not take away from your hopes for the best possible outcome. And I think that is something we can always emphasize. And as I mentioned earlier, kids are far more able to put the seriousness of your cancer out of their mind for a period of time. So they will compartmentalize in a way that we find it much harder to do as we grow older. So for a younger child, you can say things like, sometimes people with cancer don't get better. I am doing everything I can to not let that happen. If you wanted to go in more detail, that could be like, for me, that means getting my special cancer treatment and fill in the blank about whatever one that might be, and seeing my doctor. And I'm so glad I have a whole team of people at the hospital who are helping me. I'm not doing this alone. And I'm so grateful to have their support and their help and whoever else is in your life that's a part of this. So again, what we're trying to do is acknowledge the possibility, but really scaffold that with everything else that's happening. If it's relevant, you can even say some people don't get better and I might not get better, and that's really far away. I think, again, there's a lot of nuance in terms of where someone is and how much you want to have in terms of the details here. And I think for older kids, you may want to be more direct. So that can include things like some people with this sort of cancer recover, but most don't. I'm doing absolutely everything I can to keep the cancer under control. And if it's relevant, you can say things like, and right now that's working really well. And I am taking this treatment that does this, and it has been able to keep the cancer cells from growing. And I expect this to work for as long as possible, or for however much time. I find with older children, we often have to give more information, and you can even anticipate some of the questions in their mind, because oftentimes by the time we're looking at an adolescence and older, they're often not that different from the ones that we might have ourselves. So if I often find that whenever we're talking with kids that are a little bit adolescents and above, I encourage parents to do a little bit of work with their own oncology team to have a sense of, what's next, what's down the pike. So that can include things like, well, what if the treatment stops working? Because that is a really common question that teens might ask. And it can feel so helpful if you can say, right now my treatment includes fill in the blank. And you can add to that and say, well, my doctor and my cancer team already has a plan for next steps if this treatment stops working as well. And so what we're trying to do is help them give some reassurance that this is not something that is a surprise or something that you're not already aware of as well. The main things why I like to kind of put this on the table here is that a lot of times we find that parents don't want to bring up the possibilities of what might happen unless their kids bring it up or ask about it. And I respect it's often because we don't want to scare our kids or give them more information than they feel like they can handle. And I will again say everyone knows their children best. And at the same time, what I do like to emphasize is that it's also possible that your kid may be afraid to ask you about certain topics if you haven't brought it up yet. And I think it's helpful to know from some prior research that most adults who have experienced parental cancer as a child, meaning as a kid, their parent had cancer, and most would have preferred to know this information much earlier than when they were told. And I think in part that's because, like adults, like all of us, kids need time to process information, to adjust, to make decisions, and get support for their concerns. And as much as we would like to spare our kids worry, avoiding the possibility of what can happen doesn't really change that need for time to process and time to get support for those. And usually it's the parent going through the illness that is one of the people who is best equipped to do so. And when I think about what that can mean, I think that for the younger children, it's often enough to provide that reassurance about what's happening today. And also, I'll keep you updated if things change. And most younger kids are going to be pretty good with that. As their kids get older and their personalities start to emerge, they also get to experience the full range of emotions, including all the tough ones that we can find so painful to sometimes experience, like anger, disappointment, embarrassment, sadness. And this is where I think we can explicitly normalize that. And that I like to remind everyone repetition is required. And preparing children for the changes that they can expect, as well as the changes that might be happening day to day, I think is where the messy middle, where most of us find ourselves. And examples of this can include when the day-to-day life of living with treatment often means that there's real fluctuations or unpredictability in how you feel day to day or week to week. And unfortunately, pain, nausea, and fatigue are some of the most challenging symptoms to have when living with cancer, and they're also some of the most common, and they're invisible. And helping children understand what fatigue means or tired means in daily life, we might have an understanding of what our limitations might be or what that might impact us. But oftentimes for younger kids, we actually kind of need to get concrete. So it can include things like it might take me longer to get up and move around, or I might have to lie down even if you don't see anything wrong with me. And this is often, I think, where the rubber meets the road, in the sense where this is where plans can change, where there can be a little bit of a disconnect from the idea that, well, you seemed fine yesterday and what happened today. The one resource that was mentioned earlier that I want to kind of bring up as an example for how we can support these conversations is the book called The Adventure Jar. It's ideally written from the perspective and for help of, I'd say, elementary to maybe even middle school age kids, but I find it's actually really helpful with younger kids as well, like 4 or 5. And Gilead Sciences kind of worked with a whole panel of individuals living with MBC, and I felt very lucky to be part of it. And it supports the creation of a way to talk about how some of these unpredictability and how things can change in a way that, again, is very normal. So it can demonstrate that this is, one, they're not the only ones who go through this, and that, two, it's okay to express their disappointment or their fear or to ask questions. And I find that it's often really helpful to have a starting point for some of these conversations, because as any parent of a adolescent may know, and I have one, you can't just go like, how is something going, and get a good answer. You're asking, how is school? You're going to get okay. And that's not really, for example, what you're trying to know. And same way, if you're just to say like, how do you feel about my cancer? The likelihood is that you're unlikely to get a meaningful answer back unless you've kind of got that kid who can take that, and that's not common. And what's far more helpful is to start with something like reading this book together, or for older children, to reference something that has directly impacted them. Whether, for example, you were supposed to drive them to practice and you couldn't. It is such a more helpful starting place to go with. I was so bummed that I couldn't take you to practice. My fatigue was really hitting me that day. And I know I was disappointed. What was it like for you? And again, it's just so much more helpful to get a little bit more information than it would be if you went and just said, how are you feeling about big giant topic? Because most of us would not necessarily be able to answer that either. The part that I think can get a little bit more nuanced as kids get older, into middle school and into adolescence, into even young adults, are when our kids are having a tough time, and we're not sure if it's because of all the changes happening with our disease, or if it's because of something I said, or if it's because of things that are completely unrelated to all this. And I often find we can't always know, they may not always know, and that it's only through these kind of small snack size conversations over time, where we're checking in about something specific, that we can maybe perhaps start to piece some of those together. But I often say this is where, if kids are struggling, having a method to talk about this in a kind of supportive space with oftentimes someone that's outside of the family can be really helpful. And that sometimes means that we may or may not be a part of those conversations directly as a parent. And what I think about there is the benefit of having other supportive adults, whether it's a teacher, another parent of a friend, it could be a coach, it could be a therapist, is so helpful because even when there's great communication, your kid may have questions or concerns that they're reluctant to ask you directly. And it's often because they love you. It's often because they can have awareness of how this might be hurtful to hear. And it can be helpful if they know there's someone else that they can ask. And what I might say again here is if this is a person who you think would be a resource, some of the key things that are helpful perhaps to have a shared decision about is what you've already told your kid, how it might impact them, how you would like them to respond if your kid asks them questions about your diagnosis or treatment or prognosis, and whether or not they plan to share with you the questions or discussions they have with your kid. And I often find that these are fairly straightforward conversations. Most parents do want to know, and most other caring adults actually do want to be helpful. And I think this is where we can lean on the support we have from those around us. I could keep on talking forever, but I actually would like to see if there are specific questions. And if not, then I can talk about other stuff. And I'm sure Sarah could talk about this at length as well. So I will take a pause.
Thank you so much, Dr. Park and Sarah, for your presentations. From the perspective of an individual living with metastatic breast cancer, it was so informative. It was real. It was raw, and it really spoke volumes. So thank you to both of you for your presentations. Absolutely fantastic. The first question that we have is for Dr. Park, and it is, what do you recommend for ongoing communication with children? Are there any tools or resources you recommend?
So I would say it depends a little bit on the age. And I find that if not every family agrees with this, I will say that most kids can usually pick up when you've got like a big appointment or scan coming, because as much as we might think we're doing a fantastic job at like containing ourselves, they're a little too smart to be fooled by our acting. And so if they pick up that you're more tense or more worried, I often find that the scan or key appointments is a good time to check in. And, it's wonderful when it's like, looks good, no changes. This is the plan. It's a great way to circle back. And if it's a bigger one where perhaps there's going to be a change in treatment, then a little bit of pre-planning there of saying like, this might mean, it's harder if it's brand new information when we're kind of coping with a big change. It's a lot easier if they've already kind of got primed for, okay, this might show a change and that's disappointing. And because it might mean their schedules change, treatments change. But if they're kind of already have an awareness that that's what the likely thing going to be next, it makes it easier. So I find that can be a good way to kind of bring a regular cadence to it, because we don't want to be talking about cancer all the time. Just really don't. And at the same time, we don't want to ignore it. If anything, folks with teens can sometimes feel like, I wish they cared a little bit more about the fact that I'm really feeling crappy. So it's a good way to kind of almost check in to make sure, like, are we all on the same page? So that's one way. And for younger kids, I find that it's usually a way to kind of just pick it up based on what's really observable. Like if you've, I think the hair loss is a much kind of older idea of how things can be. It can be that you're more irritable, or it could be that Oh, there's so many different ways. I'm trying to think of the ones that are particularly salient. It could mean that you've got to go to bed earlier than you used to, and it's someone else who's kind of doing the heavy lifting at bedtime. And that could be a really good starting place to kind of talk about what's happening. And, but as long as it's not the first time bringing up something big, oftentimes, that one-on-one time before bedtime is actually a really nice time for kids as well. And again, I love the idea of using books or just something to kind of start it, and you can follow their lead because some kids are not talkers.
Isn't that the truth? Thank you so much. Again, that was just such a insightful answer, very much. And those are very good tools and strategies that I know that I find beneficial, and I definitely know others would find beneficial as well. So thank you. Sarah, I have a question for you as well. What has been your experience working with family members who are struggling with their loved ones with their metastatic breast cancer diagnosis? How do you help support them, and what advice do you give them?
Yes, yes, such a great question. And I will say probably that one of the biggest struggles among many for supportive family members involved is not knowing how to help or being worried about doing the wrong thing and just being in this state of uncertainty. And also feeling the lack of control. Here you are sort of on the sidelines watching this happen. And what a tremendous struggle that is. And so I would say we first off would normalize those feelings, validate them, recognize them, allow them to feel, allow them to know that this is part of the story and something that they have a right to feel. Um, and then we might do some teaching on, maybe different supportive communication skills. Maybe working on how to become an active listener or be a supporter without necessarily having a solution, just being a supportive presence. Um, and also having discussion on healthy boundaries for yourself as the caregiver and for the supporter, and what that might look like, taking breaks, taking time that you need to connect to yourself and also, sort of recharge to be up and present to support your loved one. And I will say that Komen has a wonderful online resource called What to Do and Say. And it's a lovely way, has a lovely layout of these communication skills like active listening, and that can be a fabulous tool as supporters are learning about what to do and how to manage. Um, and I would say, as far as advice that I might share with caregivers and loved ones is name your truth, speak your truth, and know that life is different now, and developing a sense of normalcy, um, and working on that communication, connecting with your loved one, connecting with your family members at different stages and at times where those folks are ready to have that dialogue themselves too. Um, Thank you.
No, thank you so very much. And especially thank you for telling about that resource on the Komen's homepage. And also with you, Dr. Park, for letting them know about the adventure jar. So from the parent perspective, I know a lot of times it's like, oh, I should do this, I should do that. But knowing that it's someplace where I can tab it, someplace I can save it for later. That's extremely helpful. So thank you so much to both of you. Such a wealth of knowledge and information. There is another question, and I'm assuming this is for me. It says, how do you manage people saying things that aren't helpful? For example, you don't look sick, or giving unwarranted advice. I don't know if it's age or it's just the length of time that I've had this diagnosis, but I feel my skin has gotten a lot more thicker, and I feel that my sense of humor has gotten a little bit more darker. And it depends on who I'm speaking with. Obviously, if it's like my grandma, or if it's one of my elderly aunts or uncles, and they say you don't look sick, I would possibly just respond with, "Thank you so much. I appreciate that." And then just move on, because I know that it's not coming from a place of malice. It's coming from a place of, "Hey, I'm checking in with her." Okay. Same thing if it's unwarranted advice from, again, someone that I know, or I know their intentions. For those that I might not know, and I can feel it's not necessarily coming from an authentic place, more of a challenge, I might say, "Thank you. You do not look sick either." Or give the unwarranted advice and respond with, "Oh, did you know the human head weighs 10 pounds?" Just so that way they're like, "What?" Taken aback. So then the unwarranted advice ceases, at least for a little bit, or they have a little bit of a reflectionary period. Um, so it's different items like that. That's, I guess, what my personality would answer. So I really love the questions that the individuals ask, because I feel that they warrant some very good feedback. So thank you so much to both of you for answering yours as well. Let's see here. We can start wrapping up. I cannot believe it is almost time. I feel we could just continue this conversation going on. I will gladly pass the reins back to you, Casey. And again, it's been such an honor, Dr. Park and Sarah, to have this joint platform with you.
Thank you so much. Yes, unfortunately, we are rapidly running out of time. I too could hang on and have this chat for the rest of the afternoon. But I want to say one more time, just thank you so much to our incredible speakers and fabulous moderators. So Dr. Park, Sarah, and Amanda, I'm so grateful for your time today. Every single one of you gave us so much insight. And I think sometimes just maybe validated some lived experiences of people that hopped on this call, kind of checked to make sure they felt like they were doing and saying the right things. You also gave some real tangible advice that they can leave here today and try out with their own children, their own family members. So thank you for all of that. Today's session was recorded and it's going to be posted to our landing page soon. It'll also be emailed to you once it's up on our YouTube channel. You can also view previous sessions that you may have missed. Again, we cover a wide variety of topics, so pick and choose what is relevant to your journey and where you're at with your treatment. Please feel free to share this content with friends, family, other healthcare professionals, anyone that you think might be helped by it. And you can visit our landing page to sign up for future events and our newsletter to stay informed, which is komen.org/MBC series. So one more time before we sign off, I want to thank our 2025 sponsors for their generous support. So thank you to our premier sponsors, AstraZeneca, Merck, and Gilead. And thank you to our signature sponsors, Daiichi Sankyo and Novartis. So last but certainly not least, I promised you a link so that we can get your survey response, not just about today, although I want to hear if you liked this, good, bad, ugly, what else we need to cover. But I also want to know what should we do next year? What's important? Where are you struggling to find information? And what would be helpful? And that's how we craft this series. So please, click on the link, take just a few minutes, give us some feedback, let us know how we did today, but let us know what you need. The next event in the MBC series will not be till January. We're taking December off. But we will be covering the best findings and presentations from the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium. So stay tuned for more details. We have to get through the event to know what the best findings are, but we will be talking about them in January. So check back soon. Thank you again for today. Thank you to our speakers, and I hope everyone has a fabulous holiday.